Hello, and welcome to Chess Book Reviews 77. I've got three titles for you here. There's no link between them. They're not particularly recent, but I like them. I'd like you to like them too. The first one is this. It's extremely unlikely you've seen it before. And the reason for that is because it is written by an amateur, and I think, well, he didn't inquire too strongly, I think he published it himself. It says Akiba Publishing, the name of Rubinstein, but I think, in truth, he did it himself. It's My Selected Games by Neil Sullivan. Neil is a very knowledgeable chess man, and we corresponded for some years. We've lost contact recently, but that's nothing to do with anything. He tolerates it. He dedicates it to his tolerant wife. Her support and encouragement. Without her, this work would not exist. He mentions Pooh Bar. There's obviously a fellow Gilbert and Sullivan fan. And it is done in sections. Part 1, Introduction, selected games 1 to 20. Part 2, 21 to 50. So it's 50 games in all. And he also has an afterword, a list of books which have helped him, favourite books, and a list of opponents. He's mostly based, I think, or perhaps entirely based in the USA. He sent this to me and he dedicated it inside. He signed it, which was very much appreciated. Just have some coffee, just made some. I think he starts off with some games. I started at high school and startled to find that other people played chess, that some of them were very serious indeed. Yes. Say that again. In many respects, I'm reluctant to present this project in a larger audience. I realise it may come across as arrogant. No, I don't think it does. As many stronger players from Quebec and Canada have no book of their games. I haven't said he comes from the US. I should have done my homework. He lives further north than that. He's from Canada. Here we are, in the first of the games. It's in algebraic notation, short form algebraic with notes, some interesting notes, and sprinkling of diagrams, which I always like. I'm sure you do as well. Anyway. It says, this book grew from chess notebooks. Trying to better understand his own play, he decided, that's the author, to produce a games collection. He hopes that other amateur players might be inspired to do the same. And it said he's an expert from Montreal. 50 games, that bit I did get right. Despite being far from GM quality, games played at this level can be instructive and entertaining. I played through a few of these, not all of them, of course I haven't, but I played through some of these, and they are indeed. His name is Neil Sullivan, and I don't know if any copies of this book would still be available. If they are, contact me, and I will, in my turn, you can try and contact him at Akiba Simba, all one word, AKIMASIMBA @hotmail.com. And those are the names of his two cats. Wow. And here's game 50 from 2004. So it has to be admitted that it's not particularly an up-to-date collection, but I think particularly for amateurs, writing as an amateur as he does, I don't think that's important, really. What is important is it shows his love for chess. He's honest. And you may pick up some good tips and wrinkles. That's the first of the three. The second is a little bit sad because the author died some months ago. And I wrote an obituary, but unfortunately, It wasn't used, so that's not a crime, but it was a shame. It says many chess players adopt an unnecessarily defensive approach when they have the black pieces, but not Grandmaster Adorjan, the author, who claims that the reason many players rarely win with black is that they don't even try. I'm not at least convinced that's true. The author makes his point by recommending specific opening variations in which black can play for a win without taking undue risks. He illustrates his ideas for the complete games, explaining in his own effervescent style. That's true. Black is okay should enable club and tournament players not only to win more games as black, but actually to enjoy having the black pieces. Grandmaster Andras Adorjan has represented Hungary in many Olympiads, that's the World Team Championships, and was a world title candidate in 1980. He was indeed. He is a respected writer and lecturer and has acted as second to Garry Kasparov. Now, one reason I'm showing you this is because there are now other books called Black is Okay, and I've got one or other of them, but I think this is the best one. The reason for that is that it doesn't, it's less, I was going to say flippant, but it chooses various aspects of the game, in this case, openings, as I've just read out, and goes into quite a lot of detail. I see that this was published in 1988, which sounds like it's a thousand years ago, but it's not. It's not. There's various TNs, we might call them. The quill of the hedgehog, flexibility above all, the Nimzo Indian, defense or counterattack. A novelty on the fifth move, a blow to the carrier's attack. He also includes an index of games. Let's go to the index of games first and see what we find. They're not all his, but he throws in his own games, and so he should. There's some games at the highest level. Karpov, Kasparov, 3 Kasparov against Korchnoi, Chom. There's some very, very high level games here. Even Plaskett, Adorjan. I've no idea what Plaskett is, of course. Let me give you a flavour of the depth he goes into about that. You know, you're reading a book by a grandmaster when the technical blurb goes right down the page. But for all of that, he does give games, explain games in a fairly straightforward manner. Here we are. Here he is explaining something in the Sicilian. This is not an unusual move, which should not turn out well for white. It may be termed a novelty, but scarcely an improvement. Well, that's straight talking, isn't it? My opponent refrains from d4 and develops his pieces instead. This unusual plan, however, does not promise him success. Again, how honest can you get? He calls this a mistake in the second move. I've never seriously thought that the system with 2c3 undermines the confidence of the Sicilian fan. In other words, e4, c5, 2, c3. You might call that the Alapin. It would, of course, be unwise to assert the variation with 2c3 is bad for white, but the facts speak for themselves. Well, I wonder whether they do. Quotes again by Sveshnikov, who gave so much of his life to the study of that variation, and before he died, and he has passed away as well, wrote a massive great tome on that subject. This is not a massive great tome, but it is a textbook, and I know Andrew Martin will be very, very pleased to be reminded to me, and I to him, likes it very much. And as I can only say, there are various books with this title. All of them come from, I think, 3, if not 4 different editions, and they are very different indeed. Now, just in case you're wondering what you're getting, for 161 pages and about 10 chapters. So there you are. It's an old-fashioned, good quality, obtainable, I'm sure, from second-hand bookshops and book dealers. And last and best, this. From Out of the Shadows, a book by Taylor Kingston, with a foreword by Grandmaster Andras Soltis. It's called Caissa's, the Goddess of Chess, Wounded Warrior. An exploration and celebration of the artistry of the Belgian chess champion and prolific international tournament player Edgard Colle, 1897 to 1932. In other words, he lived to be 35, and the book came out a couple of years ago. I remember when it came out, how impressed I was, and I spoke to another number of other players and reviewers who agreed with me, and I don't often get any agreement about anything. It is published by Russell Enterprises from the USA. Please excuse me. Right, this is called Fighting Chess of Edgard Colle. It's available in this print form or as an ebook. He reviews it by beginning with looking at other books, Kmoch, Reinfeld, Max Erber himself. He also explains certain symbols which he uses. The spiritual precursor to this book is one of Fred Reinfeld's lesser-known works, Colle's Chess Masterpieces, first published in 1936. It was intended by the prolific author as a belated memorial tribute to Colle, who died in 1932, and makes memorial tribute to Edgard Colle, who had died. The fine Belgian master, sorry, I'm not reading this very well, who had never played outside Europe. The publisher's original idea was simply to reprint Reinfeld's book, and the writer perhaps supplying a few gentle computer-assisted analytical corrections when it turned out Reinfeld had erred. I think what he says, in essence, is that the Reinfeld book is a lot better than you might think. Reinfeld took a lot of kicking. I even kicked him myself on occasion. He deserves not a bit of it. I think he's a very good writer for average and below average ability players, which I've always been in chess. If you get the chance to look through one of his books, and you might do, we might be lent one, you might see one in the library or something, or kicking around at your chess club, pick it up and have a good look through. You don't have to, fall in love with it. But an hour or two spent looking at 1 or 2 of the chapters might be useful. This looks naive. He's talking about the Colle system with bishop d3, knight b, d2, c2, c3, and castle short. Yes, well, that's far more popular nowadays because of bullet chess, and also because of younger players thinking that if you make patterns with your pieces, that's more or less it. It isn't, but some minor openings were popularized during the 1920s, the greatest era of innovation. I agree with that. Some, like Alekhine's defense and Grunfeld defense and Tartakova's Catalan opening, are standard play. Yes, they are. I agree with that. We should be thankful to remember Edgard Colle, and there he is. Wartime haircut. And almost like a passport photograph. He was obviously a gentleman. Some head case like Alekhine. or some roving ambassador like Capablanca. In fact, he never travelled outside of Europe. Give some background to his life. Problems that he encountered with the German invasion during the First World War. The bellicose German monarchy, along with the empires of Austria-Hungary, Tsarist Russia, and Ottoman Turkey, no longer existed. New nations such as Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Yugoslavia sprang up from their remains. Belgium returned to self-rule, and pre-war borders, the small piece of German territory, added. In other words, it was the same except not. It was the same but different. He quotes, and I'm not about to read it all out, Neville Coles's book, Dynamic Chess. Yes, that's the one loved by Keane. And if you see a copy of Dynamic Chess, you snap it up. He's not very good on the more recent stuff, but he had quite a vision, did Neville Coles. Anyway, you don't want to hear about that at the moment. Here we are with an appraisal by Max Oehfer, the world champion, of course, in his time, right, 1935-6, wasn't it? And now we have some statistics about Colle's career. He won Moran 1926 with 9 out of 13. Ahead of a fairly tough field. He won Scarborough 1930, ahead of Sultan Khan, Rubinstein, Maroczy, Sir George Thomas, you name it. And he also tied for first place with Takacs, who I've never heard of, and equal with Frank Marshall, whom he beat in their individual game. There's some personal stuff, memoirs, and a note on the annotations of some games. And then some, if you look, it's in short form, how to break figurines. A system which, let's be honest, Colle would not have used or immediately have possibly even liked, but that doesn't matter in the least. I like it, you'll like it, and modern printers use it to great effect. These have short notes, but good ones. Colle was not afraid to experiment with unorthodox openings. No, he wasn't. This is the Verisov. Very detailed note. And photographs of his foes. So Moscow Borovsky. And one of the reasons I like this book so much is it actually gives sort of little, not quizzes, but it rather than just stuffing it down your throat, it gives you this discussion points. What would you do here? Go back to that diagram and say, your first reaction was probably that which Colle blundered or Colle did a good move. Did you find it? Apparently thinking it obvious that black wins, but even in this inferior line, white is winning after any of the several moves, and he gives all the options and the computer assessments in decimals in brackets. Again, not everyone will want that, but I think it adds a certain, slows the tempo down, and it allows you to savor the games. It's quite a meaty book. Look, you wouldn't call that a pamphlet, would you? These are the games from Baden-Baden, Baden-Baden, perhaps, 1925. He uses Rabar indexes, which you might like. I try and use them. There's a little bit of background to the opponents. Here's one against Paul List, who played for England, fleetingly. Game against Samish. The one and only David Janowski, who's recently been Lord and Magnified on Matthew Sadler's site. If you don't want to treat yourself, and I hope that you do, if you enjoy the re-engineering of the old classics, whatever Matthew calls it. You Google it, you look on YouTube, and you'll see some amazing games. Grandmaster Sadler getting very, very enthusiastic, and so he should. It's lovely to see that. He was very good at chess, very young indeed, Matthew, and he has preserved an infectious, I was going to say schoolboy, I don't mean childish, but I do mean fun and involved attitude to the older games. Follies, failures, and might have beens. And again, he quotes Dynamic Chess by Neville Coles and Colle's game against Max Erver and one against Capablanca. And he says he makes an opening gaff. This was from Budapest, 1929, not a tournament I know anything about. Games against Nimzovich again. So clearly this is the creme de la creme. Look at this. If there's anybody you want to go into a middle game with, or transpose into an ending, look at the number of diagrams on those. Four diagrams there, 3 on the adjacent page. All of those are related to, I think, yes, here's Colle's game against the one and only Oron Nimzovich. Wow. Repeat, wow. And the notes are many and varied, from asides to statistics to variations to what might have been to regrets and weepy-eyed adulation as well. Taylor Kingston, full marks. Well, we're about a third of the way through and I've got about 67 games. Here's a game against his mate, Koltanowski. I think Koltanowski, Colle, died so young, and Koltanowski, who ended up in America, died so old. And I think one reason that he kept going, he did nights tours and things and PR, didn't he? A bit like Cashdan. One reason for that was that he mourned his friend. Game against the one and only Vera. Moved with her mother and sister to England, where she was tutored in chess by Getha and Roxy. That plus her own talent made her the first official women's world champion, title she held from 1907 to her death, which was absolutely horrific. I mean, all deaths, you might say, are horrific, but someone could just slip away silently, quietly. They must have been frightened out of their wits, the ladies. She was with her mother and sister, and they were hiding in the basement. Anyway, this is not the place to go on about that sort of thing. A game against Rubinstein. And who better to play than Rubinstein? This is the game is given in the World's Great Chess Games by Rubin Fine. In most of his greatest games, the rook and bishop straight line pieces stand out. The endgame, he is supreme. Well, Colle with black, beat Rubinstein. I quote one of his biographers, Steve Cunliffe, and saying he was never the same after the First World War. That was Rubinstein. A game against young Mises. Always a player I like to play over. Against a Dutch amateur player. I will not try and pronounce his name because I'll mispronounce his name. Dr. Seitz, who came to England a fair bit. Regular and German championships and mid-tier European tournaments. He was indeed. He played for the Germans. I didn't know that. In 1939, he was stranded in Buenos Aires when war broke out. Game against Boglibov. Here's notes by Reinfeldt, again, look at the depth he goes into. There's 7 diagrams on 2 pages. And yet it's not a wearisome hack or an odyssey. Well, perhaps it is an odyssey, but it's not wearisome. I very, very strongly recommend this book. Here's a game against Grob or Grobe. A game against Spielmann, in which Colle plays the other kind of defence. I like that myself at the moment in Blex games. Don't tell anybody I said that. Another game against Frank Marshall with a picture of the great American. Without cigar in hand. Colle lucks out, it says. You might not know what that word means, but I don't speak American. But just teasing. Just now flicking to the back. Some games without notes, which little cartoon of Colle having a cigarette and looking a bit mournful. There you go. I used to try and do cartoons myself, but not too much, mate. Yes, he mentioned some game against Sir George Thomas from Liège, 1930, and a very detailed write-up. I haven't checked it, but a very detailed write-up, like a CV from 1919 to 1931. The matches he played, the tournaments he competed in. And there weren't too many disasters. Carlsbad, 1929, he only came 12th. No, that might be excusable if we knew how strong it was. And some team matches. And then some cross tables, which are always useful, aren't they? See, I guess you don't know what they look like. There they are. You can follow his progress. This book has about 250 pages, and the last sort of 10-15 pages are dedicated to results. It's something like that 1929 tournament where he did so badly. Oh, it was massively strong. Alkine Nimzovich, it's almost a who's who. Rubinstein, Bogliabov, Yates, Spielmann, Vidmar, Tartakova, Maroczy. Yes, that was strong. San Remo. Nice place to go to, I'm sure. 1930. The book has finally 272 pages, an index of openings, with strong emphasis on the Queen's Gambit and the Colle system itself, the eponymous system, and lots of games against Nimzovich, as I said, 4, and 3 against his mate, his very dear friend, Koltanowski, and 5 games against George Thomas, and so on. F.D. Yates, 6 games. It has a nice cover too, doesn't it? Look at that. Thank you for your time. This has been Chess Book Reviews 77. Goodbye.